wondered and kind of thought, why on earth would people that made their money through the free market system, and some of them ended up getting in with the government, so I'm not so sure how free market it was, big government, big business, corporate fascism, if you will. But nonetheless, they sell cars, they sell products, they need people to have money, disposable income to buy these things. Why would they want to destroy the system by which many of them became extremely wealthy? Well, I think, first of all, we all realize, number one, it is a spiritual battle, Ephesians 6. I think we also realize that for some of them, after they obtain so much money, it's about power, the will to power. Isn't that what Friedrich Nietzsche said? The will to power, master morality and slave morality. Their pride, their ego, their nihilistic worldview. Life has no ultimate meaning or purpose other than the pursuit of power. They obtained money and now they're after unlimited power. But for some of them, it's not just about power. It's also about more money. How much is enough? Just a little more. Isn't that what the billionaire said when asked? Just a little more. Well, what if they thought they could harvest unto themselves incredible amounts of money and power by turning the American system really into one big gigantic corporation, if you will, that they run with a CEO at the top, and them basically as board members of the CEO of the company. CEO is board members of the company. You have the CEO, then you have the board members. They could be the board members of this company. And so over the weekend, I was working. I worked a lot over the Thanksgiving weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I took off time for family, obviously. My granddaughter, my daughter, my son-in-law were in town. We had a great time. I'll show you some pictures and video tonight on Brain House Live of the granddaughter, who's now, what is she now, 16 months old? And is going through a stack of flashcards. And you hold it up and she'll say, fox, cat, dog, car, beep, beep. Oh, wait a minute, 16 months old. My wife says, I wouldn't know. I would not know these things. But my wife and my sister-in-law were like, this is like way ahead of schedule here, guys. You got yourself a little prodigy on your hands. I would not know these things. A lot of times dads don't know this kind of stuff. When are they supposed to walk? When are they supposed to talk? All that kind of thing. I can't tell you. I don't remember. But I'm told this is very early. So we had a lot of fun. I videotaped some of it. I'll share it tonight. But there were nap times, and she slept a lot because she got a little cold, so she slept a lot. So during nap times or at night while they were watching a movie or something, I was pounding away on the keyboard, writing the next and final part of Brainwashed America, Part 3. I have it here. This is now, as of right now, as of broadcast time here today, this is 66 pages. 66 pages is the script of Brainwashed America, Part 3, that I was working on for the last Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then early this morning. So I guess I'm on day 5 of writing the script for Brainwashed America, the final part, Part 3, that I hope to start filming this week. Well, in my writing, I had in my notes for the conclusion of, at the conclusion of Part 2, which came out now a couple years ago, maybe more than a couple years. I don't know. I've lost track. But this series should not have taken this long to produce, folks. But a lot of things have happened along the way that have needed my attention. And so I'm back to this finally. And at the end of Part 2, I had a note, and I had watched a video of Norman Dodd from 1982 talking about his being the lead investigator of the Reese Committee, named after a congressman who I think was from my home state of Tennessee, on these foundations. And I want to share that with you today and invite Courtenay to join us here after she hears some of this, because I believe it will explain to you what is the end game goal. Because perhaps you, like myself, have thought, why would these people want to destroy a free market system, discretionary income? that people can generate and then to buy things. Well, I think I explained part of it. They're wanting to destroy the system we have now to go to really more of a CEO, the president as CEO, a monarchy, if you will, a gigantic corporation run by bankers. And isn't that what Carroll Quigley told us in his book, Tragedy and Hope in 1966, that at the apex of this is the Bank for International Settlements, the central bank of central bankers. This will be what ushers in the New World Order, the bankers. And then dividing the world into 10 regions, which I think the UN, the Club of Rome, the European Commission have already done, which fits perfectly with what we see in the book of Revelation. And 10 world leaders, 10 assistants, the world, I believe, divided into 10 regions, a Eurocentric world government. And isn't that interesting that in this conversation that Mr. G. Edward Griffin had with Norman Dodd, it comes up that one of the objectives or goals was to roll America into the Soviet Union, into a Soviet Union style government where it's run from the top down with total control. But he also mentioned the fact there were those who wanted to return America to Europe. They were very upset about the idea of the colonies. Well, doesn't that fit with what I put in my book in 2015, The Coming Religious Reich, where Cecil Rhodes of the Rhodes Scholarship wanted to have a Eurocentric world government, a Eurocentric world government. Now, isn't that interesting? Because as I study Bible prophecy, the book of Daniel, the book of Revelation, that's exactly what I see is a Eurocentric world government. But here this weekend, as I studied it more intently and focused in, here's Mr. Dodd saying the things we already knew, but then explaining to us at the very end of the clips I'm going to play for you today, that the objective really is to turn America into a gigantic corporation from the top to the bottom that they control. Listen to this. G. Edward Griffin interviewing Mr. Norman Dodd, the lead investigator for the Reese Committee back in the mid-50s on how these nonprofit foundations, Rockefeller Foundation, Ford, Carnegie, etc., were funding the remaking of America's textbooks in the 40s and 50s to teach collectivism. Listen to this. Here's the first clip.
At what point in your career did you become connected with the Reese Committee?
1953.
1953.
Yeah.
And what was that capacity, sir?
That was the capacity of what they call Director of Research for the Reese Committee.
Can you tell us what the Reese Committee was attempting to do?
Yes, I can tell you. It was operating and carrying out instructions embodied in a resolution passed by the House of Representatives, which was to investigate the activities of foundations as to whether or not these activities could justifiably be labeled un-American without, I might say, defining what they meant by un-American. But that was the resolution, and the committee had then the task of selecting a council, and the council in turn had the task of selecting a staff, and he had to have somebody who would direct the work of that staff, and that was what they meant by the Director of Research.
What were some of the details, the specifics that you told the committee at that time?
Well, Mr. Griffin, in that report, I specifically number one, defined what was, to us, what was meant by the phrase un-American. And we defined that in our way as being a determination to effect changes in the country by unconstitutional means. We have plenty of constitutional procedures, assuming that we wish to effect a change in the form of government or that sort of thing. And therefore, any effort in that direction which did not avail itself of the procedures which were authorized by the Constitution could be justifiably called un-American. That was the start of educating them up to that particular point.
All right. So foundations, funding curriculum, doing things that would be considered un-American, like not teaching individuality. Now, remember, this was impacting the textbooks of the 40s. This committee was convened around, what did he say, 53 he was involved? And that this had been going on in the late 30s and through the 40s, which of course helps us understand how the POWs of the Korean War, which is the basis largely of my brainwashing series, part 1 and part 2, how the American POWs in the Korean War were able to be brainwashed by the Chinese in those concentration camps, using curriculum, by the way, that was written at the Jefferson School, a communist school in New York City that was sent over to Korea to brainwash in the concentration camps American POWs who could not withstand the brainwashing because they had not been informed properly in their education about the form of government that we have, our economic system, and they could not defend it. And you're thinking to yourself, how is it that men in the Korean War in the 50s couldn't do that? Because apparently the foundations had already begun to influence the curriculum to such a degree that when these young men were in school in the late 30s and in the 40s, they didn't have the education they needed. When we come back, we're going to hear how Mr. Dodd believes what is the goal of the foundations from 1982 and a few more clips. And then Courtney's going to weigh in how it all fits in with the system being built by the technocrats.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. This Friday and Saturday, this Thursday and Friday, December 4 and 5, will be our international online Worldview Weekend. That, again, is Thursday and Friday. We have so many wonderful guests that we have booked in and interviews we have done. Over the break, I actually pre-recorded an interview for about an hour with Dr. Erwin Lutzer. We'll play that as part of our International Online Worldview Weekend for Thursday and Friday. Looking at what has happened, we're going to preempt a lot of our programming, but we'll be here for radio, of course. Looking at what has happened in 2025 and where things are going in 2026. Well, to try to figure out where we have been and where we are going, we have to, of course, study history. And as I explained to you, I sound like Ricky Ricardo there for a minute. As I was explaining to you, it's explaining, by the way, just FYI, I know that. As I was studying the testimony of Mr. Norman Dodd, the former chief investigator of the Reese Committee from the 50s, he was asked, what do you believe is the goal of these foundations? I want you to hear what he has to say. And again, we will be bringing on here, as she's listening to this, Courtenay Turner, who's an expert on technocracy, transhumanism, and where this is all going. I don't know if she's heard this before. We'll find out. But we'll see how she thinks this fits in to where we're going with technocracy. I think there's a great connection. Here is Mr. Norman Dodd being interviewed in 1982 by G. Edward Griffin. Listen to this clip.
And what we were able to bring forward was that what we had uncovered was the determination of these large endowed foundations through their trustees to actually get control over the content of American education.
There's quite a bit of publicity given to your conversation with Rowan Gaither. Would you please tell us who he was and what was that conversation you had with him?
Rowan Gaither was at that time president of the Ford Foundation. And Mr. Gaither had sent for me when I found it convenient to be in New York, asked me to call upon him at his office, which I did. And on arrival, after a few amenities, Mr. Gaither said, "Mr. Dodd, we've asked you to come up here today because we thought that possibly off the record you would tell us why the Congress is interested in the activities of foundations such as ourselves." And before I could think of how I would reply to that statement, Mr. Gaither then went on voluntarily and stated, he said, "Mr. Dodd, all of us that have a hand in the making of policies here have had experience either with the OSS during the war or the European Economic Administration after the war. We've had experience operating under directives, and these directives emanate and did emanate from the White House. Now we still operate under just such directives. Would you like to know what the substance of these directives is?" And I said, "Yes, Mr. Gaither, I'd like very much to know." Whereupon he made this statement to me, namely, "Mr. Dodd, we here operate on in response to similar directives, the substance of which is that we shall use our grant-making power so to alter life in the United States that it can be comfortably merged with the Soviet Union." Well, parenthetically, Mr. Griffin, I nearly fell off the chair. I, of course, didn't, but my response to Mr. Gaither then was, "Well, Mr. Gaither, I can now answer your first question. You forced the Congress of the United States to spend $150,000 to find out what you just told me. So why don't you I said, "Of course, legally you're entitled to make grants for this purpose. But I don't think you're entitled to withhold that information from the people of the country to whom you're indebted for your tax exemption. So why don't you tell the people of the country that's what you've told me?" And his answer was, "We would not think of doing any such thing." So then I said, "Well, Mr.
Well, there you go. We would not think of doing such a thing, which is why the Congress had to spend the money investigating. To mold America and fold it into the Soviet Union. Now, again, that's kind of startling, is it not? When you realize a lot of these people were making their money on the free market system. Why would they want to do that? Was it about money at that point for a lot of them, or was it now about control? The New World Order. We know that many of our wars are not fought for really national security purposes or any real national interest involved. It is for nation state building regions, perhaps maybe even the conflict with Putin and Ukraine and Russia is about obtaining minerals and land, or ousting Putin to divide Russia into various parts. There's a lot of speculation. Maybe Putin's going along with it. Maybe he's not. A lot of speculation. But one thing we have learned is that a lot of these wars are fought in order to redraw the map and to be done with national sovereignty and to move toward a globalist system. Here's the next clip in that interview.
How would you describe the motivation of the people who created the foundations, the big foundations in the very beginning? What is or what was their motivation?
Their motivation, well, let's take Mr. Courtenay as an example. His publicly declared and steadfast interest was to counteract the departure of the colonies from Great Britain. He was devoted to just putting the pieces back together again.
Devoted to putting the pieces back together again. I go back to, as I dealt with in the book, my book, 2015, The Coming Religious Reich, Cecil Rhodes, of the Rhodes Scholarship Program, of which people like Bill Clinton and reportedly other people like George Stephanopoulos and many people in economics and government and media were given grants, and the goal was to really push them toward understanding the need for a Eurocentric world government, the restoration of a European world empire. Sound familiar there? Maybe, again, that's why they wanted to fold America into the Soviet Union, was to fold it into the Soviet Union and then to take all of Europe as well. Here's the next clip.
How do you see that the purpose and direction of the major foundations has changed over the years to the present? What is it today?
All right, now that's the question. I want to give you his answer, as he says a few things before we get to the meat of it. And here's the meat of the answer to that question.
Future belongs to a collectivistic concept, and there's just no disagreement on this.
Why do the foundations generously support communist causes in the United States?
Well, because to them, what communism represents a means of developing what we call a monopoly. That is, the organization, will say, of large-scale industry into an administrable unit.
Do they think that they will be one of the administrators?
They will be the beneficiaries of it, yes.
Did you hear that, folks? They believed that they could develop the United States into an organization of really what would be administratable units. Joining me now is Courtenay Turner, co-author of The Final Betrayal on Technocracy. Courtenay, welcome back to the broadcast. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Are you familiar with this interview and these clips?
I have not seen these clips. I am familiar with Norman Dodd, though, and I'm very familiar with this whole lineage, yes.
So let's start with his last comment, that the goal was to create an administrative state. Is that not what technocracy and the monarchy, the CEO mentality of Yarvin and others really is with technocracy here in America? I mean, does this interview from 1982 dealing with what were the foundations in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, does it not resonate with you in 2025? Can it be brought up to speed with the technology of today? How do you see what he's saying through the lens of technocracy?
I think it's paving the way. I think this was their plan all along. Of course, they didn't have the technology back then to know exactly what it would look like or how it would be shaped up. But I think this was always their plan. What comes to mind is Charlotte Iserbyt. You know, she wrote The Deliberate Dumbing of America, right? She blew the whistle on the BEST project, which was better education through skills through technology, which is all this tech ed that we're really seeing in full bloom today. And she blew the whistle on this under the Reagan administration. And she used to say, and now I can't corroborate this, I have no way of confirming it, but it certainly looks this way. She used to say that every president had to swear on the Heritage Foundation's agenda in order to be, like they swear on the Bible, they had to swear on the Heritage Foundation plan. And when you talk about the administrative state and the CEO style monarch network states, Sov Corp or Gov Corp, as the Dark Enlightenment calls it, and how this falls in line, we can look at the Heritage Foundation put forth, not solely the Heritage Foundation, but it was their Project 2025, right? Which is essentially this unbound executive kind of a project. And one of their primary initiatives was school choice. And we now see Trump championing this, right? This is not to knock Trump. This is just to show you how these plans are such long range plans. And, whoever's in power, these plans still march along. I think they have different tactics depending on who's in power, but nonetheless, these plans we're hearing Norman Dodd from decades ago. So, and very much today, through these technologies, and this is what Charlotte Iserbyt was blowing the whistle on, was that these technologies would be designed, one, to create global citizens, which was the plan of Robert Mueller, who we talked about last time, and he based the whole world curriculum, world core curriculum, predicated on Alice Bailey's Education in the New Age. And Charlotte used to say the whole plan was to get every child into a computer. And essentially, that is what they're doing. They're putting children literally up on the blockchain ledger so that they collect all this data using this technology. And there's too many of them to be able to list now. That would be several hours. We could do a show solely on all the different technologies that are being used. But some things will be very familiar to a lot of people, certainly parents, things like SEL, social emotional learning.
Hold it there. We got a hard break.
Yep. Okay.
The computer's going to take it away. We come back. And I want to ask her about why would we want to fold the U.S. into the Soviet Union? We have a big announcement, folks. It's called Bella Melt. In the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's a satiety hormone. So when your GLP is working properly, it does help suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings you have in your body. It's going to suppress that appetite. But where Melissa got the most benefit, I think, over the last week was the L-carnitine. The L-carnitine tells your mitochondria, this is where you we've talked about it before, this is where you produce energy in your cells. It actually tells those mitochondria to burn fat for fuel.
MelissaHouseBG.com just now introducing for the first time Bella Melt with GLP-1 fast action. And welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. Courtenay Turner, co-author of the book, The Final Betrayal, really on how you see the tech bros setting up technology to control us, known as Technocracy. We're responding to the 1982 interview between the former chief executive investigator of the tax-exempt foundations during the Reese Committee of the 1950s to today. And one of the things Mr. Dodd said was, hey, look, they wanted to roll America into the Soviet Union. That's why they wanted to teach collectivism. Some of them wanted to see America rolled back into Europe, into Great Britain. They didn't like the fact that there was a breakaway. That seems to fit again with the goals of Cecil Rhodes and the Rhodes Scholarship Program, a world government based out of Europe, a Eurocentric world government. I think Bible prophecy describes that. Let's deal with the first part, though. Courtenay, why would these tech giants and executive foundations want to teach collectivism so to roll us into the Soviet Union? Why would some of them, I'm not saying all of them, but why would some of them want that?
Well, I actually think that the two part is actually related, right? We had the Great Rapprochement. William Steed said that was in 1898. Which was the plan to roll America back into Great Britain. This was very similar to a century later, we had the Kissinger rapprochement with China. So this was this idea that we would create the Anglo-American Empire and roll the United States back in. Then not too long afterwards, we've got the Fabian socialists, right? Sidney and Beatrice Webb. And they, in some of their earlier books, talked about how the Soviet Union was going to be their like testing playground for essentially they called it economic planning, but essentially for the New World Order. So now people think of them as being separate or maybe, not allies, adversaries, but they were working together, the Soviets and the Fabian socialists, because this is all part of that greater Comintern circle, right? So they were working together. And then now you had, fast forward to this time period, especially in the 80s, they were working with Gorbachev, and Reagan was actually very aware of these plans. They were doing all sorts of, they called it the Amer-Russ plan. So Amer and then RUSS. And this was a long-range plan for a collaborative education program. And it was to breed collectivists, to breed communists, but essentially so they would be part of the global citizenry. And I think that now, today, this is very advantageous to the technocrats because Russia actually is already very much in a technocratic model. And so they have the infrastructure largely in place already. But the United States is building through Silicon Valley a lot of that technology. So people think that it's all separate and individual. But if you read that AI action plan, Trump made it pretty clear that we are building the technology that they are using and that he's going to export it to the world. But they've already done that. Largely, a lot of the technology they use. I would say China is a little bit different because they're way ahead of us in many ways in terms of the technology and in terms of their own technate infrastructure.
So why would you want to teach kids collectivism to prepare for that system? Is that what would get them willing to see that, look, there are individual rights you're going to have to give up for the benefits of the group, which is why now, in order to have a stable society, to deal with the extremes on the right or the left, to deal with terrorism, we have to give up liberties, kind of like the Patriot Act after 9/11, right? Which we were immediately against. We were criticized. We were called unpatriotic. What are you, a communist? You're against the Patriot Act? We were criticized when we immediately came out against the Patriot Act after 9/11. Now people realize why we were against it. And they're going to figure this out, too, when it comes to a lot of this that they're not paying attention to. So was the objective to get people to willingly be conditioned to surrender individual rights for the collective so that the New World Order could be put in, which includes really a global system that no one can buy or sell unless you eventually, during the tribulation, I believe, have a mark. But to set up for that, where you're going to have to give up certain rights for the good of the collective, because we have so much extremism, the right, the left, terrorism. We need to have open borders. We can't control this, population that wants to cross each other's borders. We have a way to manage all this and make everybody be on their good behavior and create this utopian society by setting the right conditions. But the price will be surrender of some of your individual liberties. Thus, we have to teach them collectivism. Is that the goal?
I believe that is the goal. So that is, to me, that's just why I talk about free will all the time. And for people to understand the metaphysics upon which that rests. Because to me, that's the bulwark against tyranny. I think that's what the founding fathers realized, that that's a bulwark against tyranny, but it's also the bulwark against technocracy. And I think they have a vision for essentially like a noosphere. That's what they think that this, technocratic global infrastructure will be, where we have no individuality, we have no individual rights, we are all part of the one, right? The UN does all these symposiums. They actually call it manifesting the oneness. And they say that any dissension has to be eradicated. This is in order so that they can have peace. So I think that's absolutely the goal. If they can get everybody to give up their own individuality, and they have different ways of doing it, like some of the more spiritual, theosophical people like Barbara Marx Hubbard will talk about how those who are selfish cannot evolve. They can't co-create with the rest. So they're just going to have to be subsumed. So they don't want people thinking about any individuality. It has to be all for the greater good, right? John Stuart Mill utilitarianism. It's for the greater good, which is always catering to the lowest denominator. So I think that is the plan. If they can get everybody to think about the group instead of the individual, they will have less resistance because they can convince them, well, it's for the greater good. And that's what you're seeing. Ben Goertzel, AI for Good. They have a whole blueprint for the ethics of AI. That's of course, they're determining what those ethics are going to be, but we all have to agree to them. We all have to submit to them. And this is with the UN, the World Economic Forum. So
really what we've had now here is multiple decades of brainwashing and conditioning Americans to accept, their words, not mine, the New World Order, correct?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
You had to educate the Americanism out of them. You had to educate the Americanism out of them, educate the individuality out of them. And now you see the polls showing how many young people want socialism.
Well, and they've been so effective. And I think, this is, I know it's kind of dry and boring, but this is why I keep talking about the Declaration of Independence and about the metaphysics, because if people can understand that is the bulwark, that's the resistance. But there's a reason that's been eradicated from the education system. More than religion, because I would argue it's a very religious education system. I mean, look at social emotional learning. It's not a biblical education, but it's a very religious education. But, I would argue it's an inversion of the biblical framework. But yeah, I think that if they can convince everybody to be a part of the group, if they can give up their individuality, they will have control. And the vision is to create a noosphere, right? This is Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's vision of this like global brain, right? That's what H.G. Wells talked about, the world brain. And what's really interesting about how
right there, by the way, just so folks catch up with us on the names, Teilhard de Chardin was he is considered the father of the New Age movement. You've already mentioned Alice Bailey. Alice Bailey was an occultist who wrote over 10,000 pages with her demon, the Tibetan. She was considered the mother of the New Age movement. Teilhard de Chardin is considered the father of the New Age movement, but he was also a Jesuit priest, right? From which we get liberation theology, merging so-called Christianity with Marxism, which has flooded the churches of America, including many of your mainline Protestant evangelical churches, not mainline as in leftist churches. They went that way a long time ago. But your mainstream, maybe is a better word, your mainstream Protestant evangelical churches have now embraced liberation theology under the guise of social justice, open borders, creation care. So let's just stop for a second on Teilhard de Chardin, you bring up, the father of the New Age movement, very influential at the UN. The mother of the New Age movement, occultist Alice Bailey, the mother of the New Age movement, very influential at the UN. So when you say this is all spiritual, you're 100% right. The education in America today has moved out the Bible, and in the back door, they brought in cosmic humanism or the New Age movement.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly what they did. And this whole concept of the noosphere is the eradication of free will. It is the idea that the nous, right, the mind, is all going to be interconnected. And when you think about H.G. Wells and his world brain, which is a similar concept of this noosphere, is very interesting, especially pertaining to technology today, because what did H.G. Wells say would be the conduit to the world brain? He said that it would be the decentralization of the, all these localized ganglia, which were back then the academic institutions, the media, entertainment. And what I would argue today, now that is all of those institutions are the internet, the social media, the Googles, and all the different platforms. And they are providing the conduit to the world brain. So even though people think it's decentralized, it's actually being re-centralized towards the center and creating this world brain. But their goal is to have, this is what they talk about with the chips, right? And I don't know that everybody will have chips or they'll force everybody to have chips. I think they have other modalities. But with the chips, they do talk about, and this is a huge selling point to them, that people will be able to have essentially shared brains and shared experiences. So you won't have your individuality. You won't have private thoughts. It's all going to be part of this one, like a Google engine search, only it's part of it's in your head. And that is what they want to create.
can I add to that? I think part of that, doing that in a naturalistic situation, in the natural world, is to further their goal in the spiritual world of spiritual evolution. Darwinian evolution applied to society. As society has evolved, morals evolve, the law evolves. But then Darwinian evolution applied to the spiritual, that we have to be spiritually evolving upwards, like Friedrich Nietzsche and the Superman, or that of Charles Darwin, right? And so if you then combine that...
Robert Marx Hubbard.
Exactly. If you combine that all thinking the same way, that makes me think, as we discussed in a previous program, the power of the mind collectively coming together to send out energies. Because at the end of the day, as Eckhart Tolle said, and he's wrong, of course, but Eckhart Tolle said, who Oprah interviewed, who Oprah promoted, and Oprah Winfrey said, this is one of my favorite lines in your book, Eckhart. In the beginning, man created God. And that God is a force or energy field, think Star Wars, that we can use to our advantage. And through the power of the collective mind, we can send out those energies into the universe, and we can literally create reality through the power of our mind. This is Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. This is Robert Schuller. This is Paula White, I think, and Benny Hinn, and many of these people in the Word of Faith movement. This is where you see the merging of the spirituality of false teaching in our so-called churches, which is Christianized, so-called the New Age occultism, and now it's mainstreamed. And isn't it interesting that so many of those people now are playing on the same team, wanting a, quote, Christian nationalism that's anything but Christian, right? And a lot of people are following along, patriotic Christians, not realizing their terms and definitions don't mean the same as yours. So when we come back from the break, I want you to respond to that. The idea of the collective and those energies coming together to make the force or energy field God to do what we collectively command. Don't go away.
Introducing the Sentry Wellness System, the ultimate under-sink water treatment solution designed with you in mind. Say goodbye to harmful toxins and hello to water enriched with essential nutrients like calcium and magnesium. Enjoy the benefits of increased pH for on-demand alkalinity, all from a zero-waste system that fits seamlessly into your home. Installation is a breeze, taking just 15 minutes, so you can have clean, healthy, great-tasting water straight from your tap. Perfect for apartments, homes, rentals, and even RVs. Elevate your hydration and well-being with the Sentry Wellness System, because you deserve the best in every drop.
Sentry H2O. Tap into wellness.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Welcome back. Glad you are with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. Be sure to stay tuned for Crosstalk coming up at the top of the hour on the VCY America Radio Network. If you're on one of their terrestrial stations, just stay right where you are. If you don't have one and you'd like to listen, you can do that at vcy.org, vcy.org. We also want to thank our station down in Jacksonville, Florida, WROS, for carrying us each and every day as well. We sure appreciate our radio and terrestrial networks. Courtenay Turner joins me, co-author of the book, The Final Betrayal, with Patrick Wood. So before the break, Courtenay, I asked, is this not really the New Age concept of the power of thinking, the power of positive thinking, the secret? Remember the book Oprah promoted, The Secret? And as we all,
Byrne.
What was her name?
Rhonda Byrne.
Rhonda Byrne.
She was Australian, yeah.
As we send out, as the people send out their thoughts, they connect up with other people, and the energies of those thoughts make God, who is really our servant, they teach, this force or energy field do what we ask, but we have to ask collectively. We cannot have the negative, because the negative can cancel out the positive results we're looking for. So this is what they teach, right? This is very much scooped in cosmic humanism, New Age. So speak to that. When you talk about us all thinking the same way, there's occult metaphysics behind this, right?
Yes, and there's a lot of technology behind it as well. So there's like HeartMath, which was Rockefeller funded. Barbara Marsh Hubbard was involved with it. And they talk about, most people know of it as like a meditation app, which, that's fine. But they talk about creating global coherence. So based on the heart resonance, which the heart does have an electromagnetic field, for some people it's up to 12 feet. And they're talking about using that, but now they're talking about also using the neurofeedback. So using the brain resonance to create heart and brain resonance for global coherence. So again, this kind of noosphere, global connected kind of concept through, a meditative kumbaya type of technology. Ford actually has something for their cars, which is like this meditative for their autonomous, self-driving cars. And they have meditation software in that, which I'm guessing is probably also doing all sorts of data collection and, spyware. I can't corroborate that, but, that's my guess that's how it works under the guise that, they're trying to figure out which various modalities are most effective, for you and targeting your brainwave states. I can imagine.
Which again is why you must deal with the extremists on either side. And I believe that they're allowing the extremists to occur. They are allowing the Islamists in America.
They're creating them.
They're creating them. And they're allowing them into the U.S. They're allowing them into Great Britain, the Islamists. They want this extremism. They want this terrorism. So then to condition the people to accept the tyranny that will eradicate the chaos and then bring them peace. And I think that's also why you see our own government trying to entice, set up, entrap domestic terrorists, religious, so-called Christian, pro-life, patriot, constitutionalist, and then label them as terrorists by getting them to do things. So they can say, you see, we have this extremism on the right, we have this extremism on the left. We need to clamp it down because it's not only hurting us and creating chaos, but in their minds, there's more of a spiritual element to it. They must find a reason to get the public to agree to shut down the extremes on either side that they believe are not allowing for this occultic, metaphysical, positive energy to create this new world order. Kind of like the old bumper sticker from the 1980s. Remember that? Visualize world peace? That was a bumper sticker. Yes. Visualize the world. And people would read that, but they didn't realize, no, that is like the idea of a harmonic convergence. Everyone coming together on the same day, at the same time, globally, to harmonize, to visualize, to think, and use the power of the mind and these energies that they send out with these positive thoughts, they believe, can thus cause God, who again is a force or energy field that we use to our advantage, they teach, to do the things that we want done. So they must stamp out the negative that doesn't agree with this worldview because it is the barrier to this new order. And of course, this is, again, highly occultic, but this is what it's driving. And most people don't understand this from a religious aspect. They only are seeing it at all, if they are at all seeing it, at a political level or an economic level. They totally are oblivious to the spiritual nature of what these people are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and there's a very spiritual nature on both sides, right? The Dark Enlightenment, Nick Land is totally involved with the occult. A lot of his theories come out of the occult. And then, of course, on the left, you've got all of these theosophical, spiritual. So they're definitely both very, very steeped in the occult. However, they're also, I think, operating through the political, through these extremes in order to encourage this kind of third way communitarianism, because communitarianism is a great funnel for technocracy. And it is a very conducive to these network states, right? This idea
let me just interrupt. To define terms for new people, something we've been talking about here now for a few decades, communitarianism, big word, I know, third way, thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, socialism and capitalism, fight, fight, fight. They merge to create a third option or a third way that is a mixture of both. Socialism and capitalism merged, which is called communitarianism. A more simple way would be big government, big business, merging together for what they now call the public-private partnerships, which is the very essence of technocracy, the big tech bros in concert with the governments of the world.
Yeah, and it's exactly, again, what Charlotte Iserbyt was warning about, right? She said that the whole purpose of this whole school choice initiative was for the public-private partnerships. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing today, but it's amplified through all of this tech ed and all the partnerships that they have with the tech companies. But it's not just the tech companies. I mean, it's all around. But this is very conducive, again, to technocracy, because now you really have just these major corporations, which there aren't that many of them because they're conglomerate, and they're partnered with these NGOs, who, of course, are working for the central banks. So, and once you put in the tokenization,
Once you put in the tokenization, the digital IDs, it's over. Hold right there, Courtenay. The music is going to take it away, the computer hard break. That does it for our broadcast here on the VCY America Radio Network. Stay tuned for Crosstalk with Jim Schneider at vcy.org or on this terrestrial station that you're listening to. Folks, have we helped you understand the times and where we're going and the spiritual nature of it, the worldview war? Well, we'll get this posted up right away at worldviewradio.com for you to share with your family and friends, and at worldviewtube.com. Courtenay's my guest. Thanks, Courtenay, and thank you. Take care. And we're back with Courtenay on WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and you here at Worldview Tube. Courtenay, I want to go to this screenshot right here. Here is the book by Carol Quigley. I write about this in my 2015 book, The Coming Religious Reich. The Anglo-American Establishment. Of course, he wrote the book in 1966, Tragedy and Hope, said the New World Order would come largely through the banks, through the Bank for International Settlements, the Central Bank of Central Bankers. But then he wrote this book talking about Cecil Rhodes and his desire to use his money and his scholarships to create a Eurocentric world government, which of course fits with what Mr. Norman Dodd was saying in 1982 and his work on the Reese Committee in the 50s, that these foundation guys wanted to really reestablish America into the European system once again. Speak to this, please, because I think that's where Bible prophecy says it's going. If you read the book of Daniel, Revelation, it seems as though it's going to a Eurocentric world government.
I mean, I think there's also those 10 regions. I think that's very relevant as well. And I see those 10 regions as being various technates that will be part of the beast system or antichrist system. And then I think that's where the whole mark will come from.
Let me stop you again there. The 10
I don't have a crystal ball, but
the 10 horns are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will and then give their authority to the Antichrist. So the world divided into 10 regions, right? A North American Union, a South American Union, a European Union. But you use the word technates, be divided into technates. Describe that for those who don't know what that is.
So that was the idea out of the Technocracy Inc. and the Technocracy study course, that there would be this region. They talked about the North American, essentially the North American Union. That was their map. And it would be a controlling, technologically run. I mean, they obviously didn't have AI back then. So they didn't have the technology we do today. But they said everything would be run on energy credits, which today I think is very much like these carbon credits, carbon sequestering, and it's a very similar kind of a concept.
And whose grandfather was one of the founders of Technocracy Inc.?
It was Josh Hodlman, which is Elon Musk's grandfather.
Elon Musk's grandfather.
Elon Musk. Here's the crazy thing a lot of people don't know. So when he was kicked out of Technocracy Inc., he started a party called the Social Credit Party.
Elon's grandfather did.
Yeah.
The Social Credit Party.
It was actually called the Social Credit Party, yeah.
You couldn't make it more clear.
I actually got a copy of it.
That's the book. That you couldn't make it more clear calling it the Social Credit. The Social Credit Party.
I know, right? It doesn't get any clearer than that.
You know, in reality,
spelled it all out.
And reality is, most of these guys do. People talk about, that's conspiracy theory, and I try to tell these lame brains that will, chime in, whether on social media or they will talk behind your back, and it comes back around to you. That some of the quote pastors in town or deacons in town, he's a conspiracy theorist. No, we're not, you moron, which is really interesting for many of them who are part of the Masons and are down at the local lodge. So don't tell me about conspiracy theories. These people tell you what it is they want to do. It's not conspiracy theories. They write it in their papers. They tell you in their interviews. They tell you in their books. They tell you in their speeches. They tell you, including say, oh, it's called the Social Credit Party. They tell you.
Credit Party. Yeah, they spell it all out. The CIA, in my opinion, weaponized the term conspiracy theory in document 1035-960, right? This was countering the Warren Commission. They didn't want people investigating into JFK's assassination, so they demonized them as conspiracy theorists. Yeah, but and now they're doing something really,
go ahead. They're doing what?
Oh, I was just going to say they're doing something similar with the word schizo. I'm seeing that all over social media. It's like people who piece together and connect dots, they call it schizo posting, or they're schizo.
Really?
They've pathologized it. Yeah.
So if you try to connect
I don't know the origins of.
But if you try to connect the dots of these people, you're now schizophrenic, which, you know what? I don't know if you've thought about this, but wasn't there a movie made by a guy, brilliant mind or something, where he thought he saw all these connections, and they take you through the whole movie, and then you realize at the end he's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Russell
I don't know,
Crowe.
maybe that.
I think it was Russell Crowe was in the movie.
Oh,
Brilliant mind or something, right?
Yes. And he was like an autist, I think.
Yes.
But yeah.
But everything ended up being in his head, but he thought it was reality. So I think they're probably playing off of that, right? To try to say that those of us that are connecting the dots are like him and we're nuts.
That makes sense. And that might have been.
If we're not a threat, they wouldn't be trying to demonize us, right? We are connecting the dots. We are connecting the dots. We are showing how this all does fit together. And it is a threat to them because people are waking up, which is why they only attack the people that are a threat. They only attack the ones they fear. Wow. Great interview. Fascinating. This whole conversation, not many people could keep up with it, but of course she can. Courtenay Turner, and here is the book, The Final Betrayal. Her website is also CourtenayTurner.com. Courtenay, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah,
and folks, if you appreciate what we're doing here, where else are you going to find programming like this? We have to have your support right now. Please remember us in your end of the year giving right now, won't you? WorldviewFoundation.com. Take care. Is she still there, Logan?